Hello, welcome to Tabletop CP. Today I'll be doing a painting tutorial on winter Grenadiers. So it's been a while since I've done a painting tutorial, so I figured I'd get one done on these winter Germans. I've been working on this army quite a bit behind the scenes lately. Kind of a side project I call it. I work on them when I'm in between other projects. I'll knock out a couple models or a squad or a vehicle or something while I'm waiting for the next shipment of my main project. I've gotten pretty far on them actually, farther than I thought I did. Last thing I bought was the 10-man Grenadier section, which is this box here. So this is my last one out of this box. I painted all the rest. This is the standard I'll be going for. So a higher standard than I normally paint. It's probably my highest standard. I did do a lot of weathering on them though, snow weathering, so a lot of that detail that I did gets covered up, but that's fine. That's just how I've been doing it, and I'm just going to stick with that standard. So I'll try to keep this as brief as I can. Try to keep the banter down to a minimum. So I'm just going to go through all the steps, and at the end I will show what I have done for my winter German so far. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I do is I paint the field gray parts. So for this I just use the Vallejo World War II field gray. Good generic color. So I'll do all the parts that are field gray. So the great coat, these cold weather apparel, whatever it's called, that he's wearing around his head, and the gloves. Next color I will use is Pallid Witch Flesh. I'm going to use this for the snow camo. So in this case he just has the parka on, and that's really the only snow camo he has. So what I'll do is I'll do a couple of coats of Pallid Witch Flesh. Takes a couple layers of it to get it smooth and even. The base layer for the white is now complete. Still a little bit wet. I'll let it dry, but this part you don't have to be super careful on. I just kind of slapped it on there, because I'm going to be going over everything on top of the parka next. So next color I'm going to do is black. And black will be the webbing, the ammo pouches, and the boots. And for that I just use regular black. So the black is done. So the jack boots, the webbing, pistol or the rifle ammo pouches, and I forgot to mention the shovel holder is black as well. And I also did these straps on the Zelta band shelter quarter as well. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the bread bag. And for the bread bag I use Vallejo green gray. Next thing I will paint is the painted metal. So the helmet, the gas mask canister, the canteen cup, and I think that's it. And for that I use Vallejo German camo dark green. That's it for the dark green. I also forgot to mention the bayonet scabbard that's attached to the handle or the holder of the shovel. I also painted German camo dark green as well. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the grenade head. So for that I'm going to be using this German camo orange ochre. It's also the color I would use for Panzerfaust. And it's that same color. It's supposed to be like a Dunkelgelb, but it's a little bit brighter. And I like that a little bit more on the infantry models as compared to the vehicles. Vehicles I use a different Dunkel Gelb color, but for infantry I use this one. So this is the only part of the model that is going to be that color, is the grenade head. Next thing I will paint is the canteen itself. Very small part. I use German camo pale brown. It's getting kind of worn off, but that's what it is, and that'll be the color of the canteen. Next thing I will paint is the wood parts, so the rifle, the handle of the grenade, and the handle of the shovel. For that I use Vallejo mahogany brown. Next I will paint the Zeltbahn shelter quarter camouflage cloak. Whenever I do a figure that has a white smock or parka, I usually paint this roll here as a splinter pattern camo, like the shelter quarter is. If he's wearing a field gray top, I'll usually paint that white just to add a little contrast either way. So the first part of that is just German camo beige. Next I will paint the metal parts of the rifle, and the end cap on the grenade. I'll paint with a black metallic color, so I just use Model Air black metallic. It's really good for weapons. And that will do it for blocking in the colors. So there he is now with the initial base colors done. So next thing I'll do is take everyone's favorite hobby product, some Agrax Earthshade, and I will just go over the entire model with a fairly heavy coat and then let it dry. So the wash is now dry. You can see by looking at it that we have shadow in the recesses, and that's what we're going for. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the base colors that I used to block all these colors in, and I'm going to go over them again, being very careful though to leave the shadows in the recesses. And we'll take a couple of coats to do the pallid witch flesh to bring it back up and look smooth. But the rest of the colors should be just one coat should do it. So I'm just going to do all this in one step. I'm not going to go through each color again. So I'll just go through, bring everything back up, the first highlight layer I call this, and then we'll be back after that step. So here we have the model now with the base colors brought back up, pallid witch flesh, a couple coats of that, and frankly you could leave it at this point and just do the skin and then move on to the weathering step, which we'll get to, and you would probably never even notice that we never did the next step, because when we weather we're going to dry brush the entire thing with white, and that's going to catch a lot of these edges that you would put highlighting on. But every other one of these I've actually done this next step, so I'm just going to, for consistency's sake, I'm going to do it to this guy as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the base colors and I'm going to add a little bit of this stone gray into it. So it's a kind of a neutral lighter color. It'll brighten up these base colors, and then I'll just go over the highlighting parts, like the edges, tops of the folds, with the combination of that stone gray and the base color. And then for the camouflage parka, I'll just use pure white and go over that as well. So like I said, that this step is kind of unnecessary, especially once you see what we're going to do to this model once we get to the weathering step. But again, for consistency's sake, I'm just going to do it because not every single part of the model is going to have snow or frost on it, so I think it does add to the effect to have the highlighting on it, even if it's mostly covered. But anyway, so that's why I'm going to do it. So I'll go ahead and just do that entire step right now, and we'll come back and look at it. Alright, so we're done with the highlighting step now. So this is what it looks like. Looks pretty good, I think. I also did the face while I was doing this. Face, I just use highlight flesh with a little bit of pallid witch flesh on the high points, and then give it a light wash of Reichland flesh shade. So that is it for the model. You can stop here and be perfectly happy with it. But I want to make these guys look cold and just miserable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some weathering on it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get pure white, and I'm just going to dry brush the entire model, and that will give it a frosty look. I think that's really the whole key to the model, is that frost that's just covering the entire model. All of his clothes, all of his equipment is just covered with frost, makes him look really cold. So that's what I'll do now. I'll do the dry brush with white. So there he is, dry brush with white, gives him a frosty appearance, which I like. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to camouflage the helmet. So these helmets are their standard German green, and they would paint them white, but they would also wear off in places. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a piece of sponge, dip it in white, and just go over the helmet. I've been doing it green with the white on top. And I'm going to keep doing it that way just for consistency's sake, but I think if I were to do it again, I would actually paint the helmet white and then hit it with the dark green with the sponge, because when I do it this way, the places it would wear, that you think it would wear, are actually more white than the places that would not wear. So you would expect the top of the helmet to wear, the edges to wear. Those are the spots you would probably expect to see the green coming through the white paint. But doing it this way, it actually makes it so that it's more white on the top and the edges. It's not a huge deal. I don't think anyone would really notice. I just thought about that one day, and I had already started doing them this way, so I'm just going to keep doing it this way. So get the sponge, dip it in some white, and then you want to make sure to get most of it off because you don't want it too heavy. And then you literally just dab it on to the helmet. I think I didn't get enough there. And it'll give it that. Yeah, there's my dog. Anyway, so that's, you can see how it works there. And the beauty of it is, since you've painted it white, or since you dry brushed it white, it doesn't matter if you get any of this onto another part of the model, because it's all going to be covered with snow anyway. So there we go. And I guess at this point, if you wanted to go back over it lightly with some dark green on top of this, just to give it a little bit more texture and depth, you could do that as well. But for now, we're going to say that's good. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the base. So for the base, I just use a generic craft store brown. And then over the top of that, I'll hit it with, here it is, tan earth. I'll dry brush over that, then I'll paint the edge of the base with the tan earth. Here's the model now. The base is done. Dry brush of the frost is on, and I've hit it with a dull coat. For the dull coat, I just use a Krylon flat matte finish that I get from the hardware store. Works just fine. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the weathering part. Let me zoom out a little bit here. So for the weathering, what I do
is I use this Vallejo Environment Snow. And I'll just take a sculpting tool, put it around pretty thick. I want it to look sort of deep. So I'll put that on. And while that's still wet, I'll throw in one of these Highland or Mountain Tufts. Kind of a wintry looking tuft. And once that's on, I'll get an old brush and I'll actually stipple on snow onto places where snow would accumulate. So around the bottom of the greatcoat, on the boots, on the elbows. It won't be as obvious on this guy because he's wearing the white parka, but if he was wearing just the greatcoat, you could see snow built up on the elbows, on the front of the uniform, and then some scattered around on the equipment as well. That'll make it look like he's been laying down in the snow, he's been sitting in the snow, living in the snow in general. And then I'll also put some snow onto the mountain tuft as well to make it look like some fresh snow had fallen. And then once that's all done, I'll take some of this snow powder and just sprinkle it over everything. And it'll give it a just snowed look to it. So that is how I will do the weathering. And I'll do that right now. And then when we come back, I'll break out the rest of the squad that this guy was with and show you them finished. And then we'll take a look at what I have completed for the Winter Germans so far. Alright, so here he is, complete. Still a little wet, but it'll dry. That snow will dry hardened and it will never come off. And that snow powder also adds a little bit of sparkle to it as well, which makes it nice. So there's him. This is the rest of the German Winter Grenadier squad that came in that box. So it's really nice. I mean, the models are really great and they paint up well and they look awesome, and they're going to mix in well with the rest of my platoon. I'm going to add some much needed variety because the rest of my guys, well, we'll take a look in a minute, but most of them are going to be great coats. So getting some extra parkas and white camo mixed in with them will be nice. So now what I'll do is I'll just take these guys over and we'll look at the entire force. And here is my winter German platoon. So late war German platoon. The build I'm building for is the Sturm platoon from the Bloody Bucket pint-sized campaign for Chain of Command. But obviously these will be useful in bolt action as well, or any other late war German platoon in any game really. So these are a mix of Warlord. I have some Empress, I believe 8 Empress, 4 rifles, and 4 4 assault rifles from Empress, and the rest are all Warlord. So we'll start in the back here. I have 18 rifles. Let me see if I can find some of these Empress guys. They look pretty good next to each other. Here's one. If you look closely when you put the Empress next to the Warlord, you can see the Empress are a bit smaller, but when you're from a distance you can't even tell. They blend in well. So 18 rifles with several Panzerfaust. I have 7 assault rifles with 1 Panzerfaust so far, 2 LMG teams, 3 SMGs, a medic, an officer, a forward observer, MG42, medium mortar with spotter, Stu-42, and some pioneers. So let's go look a little bit closer at some of these. So the pioneers, I have 2 pioneer teams for Chain of Command. I have a demo team over here, and then I have a mine clearing team. Or if I want to run them in bolt action, I can just run all 6 of them with SMGs as a assault pioneer squad. So these guys are pretty cool because I actually did some customization on them. The arms and the backpacks are from the Blitzkrieg Pioneer box. So it took a little bit of green stuff work to add the cuffs. I'm not an expert with green stuff by any means, but I think that the cuffs look decent. You can't really tell that they're not cuffs, original cuffs, unless you take a really close look. But from tabletop distance, they look very close to the rest of the platoon. So of course the Stu-42, that's not part of the Bloody Bucket list, but It can be used in a generic pickup game of chain of command or in bolt action, obviously. That mortar is strictly bolt action. MG42 is for both games, so I'll have to add a couple crew to it to get it up to numbers for chain of command. I have my forward observer or mortar battery spotter. Officer, this guy, he's one of my favorite models out of all these, the officer and the medic. They get just such a cool pose. He looks really cool, looks like an officer. So that's the platoon leader. Then the medic model looks pretty cool as well. It's got that blue band, so it's kind of an Eastern Front theme. But this is a really nice model, that medic. What else we got here? My SMGs. So this guy, kind of built him to be an extra senior leader. But if he's not going to be used as senior leader, he could be a squad leader. And then I have my 2 machine guns. Oh, and there's one more thing I forgot. I also have jump off points that I made specifically for my Winter Army. I'm not going to be able to use my other ones because they'll stand out, so I just made some extra ones. So this guy here, he's real small. He's a passenger from one of the 156 half tracks. But I got some dragon's teeth and put him on there just as a jump off point. And then the other jump off point is just your generic barrels with weapons. And then the third jump off point is this medic dragging this guy. This is a special model that you get. I believe you got it when you ordered the version 2 German bolt action book, perhaps, something like that. But he was a special edition model. I didn't really know what to do with him, and as soon as I started this platoon, I realized, well, he'll make a perfect jump off point. So there he is. And that is it. That is my German platoon so far. For the rest of the Stern platoon, I need 16 total assault rifles. Pretty good on rifles. I need at least 2 more or 1 more LMG for the Stern platoon, but I want to make 6 more so that I can field a Panzer Grenadier platoon as well. And then I need a couple of extra SMG guys, because the Stern platoon actually has an SMG in in each team. That's not an NCO, plus an NCO with an SMG. I'm sorry, it's not the Stern platoon itself. It's in the Bloody Bucket. There's a regular rifle platoon, then the Stern platoon, and the rifle platoon actually has a SMG man in each squad. That's not the NCO. So I'll need a couple extra of those, which will come in handy for bolt action as well. And the rest of the stuff I need is just support. I'm going to get a Panther, probably a Panzer IV. I'm going to get the 75mm infantry gun, and I've just got a shipment in of a Panzerschreck, flamethrower, and sniper. So all those are going to be going into this platoon, I think. And I also have I do have a full box that I barely touched of the plastic Winter Grenadiers. So I definitely have enough men to do the platoon and then some, but mainly other than that I need more support options, as in tanks. So, and then after that we'll get on to the Americans. I need to build winter terrain. I need to get a winter mat. So this project's a long way off. It's going to be a long time before you see any winter battles on this channel. Hopefully maybe by the end of the year I can have enough to do a bolt action game. Americans versus Germans in the snow. That's kind of my goal, to at least get that much done. Point wise for bolt action, these guys, I think I was able to build a 1,000-point list out of this, and that was before I finished this squad that I just painted up. So I could actually probably get a little bit more. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm really pleased with them. I think they look great, and I look forward to getting some games in with them. And I look really forward to getting a campaign, the Bloody Bucket campaign going. So anyway, that'll do it for this one, and I hope that this comes in handy for anyone trying to do some winter stuff. And I know I'm going to be using it myself when I take a break from them and come back. So anyway, yeah, thanks for watching this one, and stay tuned for more battle reports and more painting tutorials.